also like to recognize our Hall of Fame Selection Committee. Thank you for your hard work. If you please stand and proceed. Before I turn the ceremony over to our Hall of Fame President, Bobby Cohn, I would like to make a special presentation and thank an extraordinary and faithful alumnus of our school. This person has been at many gatherings here over many years, served on our boards, volunteered, 50 years of being an active and supportive alumnus. He's presided over the creation and the growth of our alumni council. In short, has been both a servant and a leader for his beloved alma mater, Christ Church. Whenever we call, this alumnus has answered our call. He not only says that he loves this place, he shows it every day by his actions. He's one of those people about whom you might comment, what he does speaks so loudly that I don't even have to hear what he has to say. Although he has plenty to say, he loves a robust conversation and a good joke. If you ever get on his email chain, you'll be laughing from dawn to dusk. It is my great honor to present a message of deep gratitude, which reads as follows. Robert T.C. Cohn, class of the inimitable 1961. What he does speak so loudly. The Christ Church School community thanks you for your leadership. As chairman of the Christ Church School Hall of Fame, your insight, devotion, and passion have taken our school to a new level in honoring our alums and former faculty and staff. You have also reminded us of the importance of our school's history, and your 2 years as chairman have truly set an example for those who follow in your path. Thank you for being true orange and blue for Christ Church School and for always being a proud fighting seahorse. Bobby Cohn. This is really not his swan song. We'll call him again and he'll answer the call. Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning. Are you all awake out there? Good morning. Welcome to the 2018 Christ Church School's 16th Hall of Fame ceremony. This is another great day at Christ Church School. Thank you for being here and celebrating the work product of the school. And Jeb has already said it, but I'm going to repeat. I want to thank the Hall of Fame committee members. It has been one of the most interesting and entertaining tasks, volunteer tasks that I've had at Christ Church, is working with the Hall of Fame committee. It is very rewarding. It's just incredible to see the results of the graduates from this school. Excuse me. Today we recognize 3 graduates being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I'd like the students in here to pay attention to this. What common themes define these 3 individuals? There are many. However, I believe the following 5 measures, which I succinctly called the 5 C's, are critical and applicable to each awardee. These key success factors are universal, and I suggest that these are equally applicable to the students of today, regardless of the environment. The 5 C's. Concept. What's the view these people have? What's the plan that they came up with? What was really kind of driving them? The second critical C factor, commitment. Non-completion is not an option. Setbacks are barriers and ultimately serve as the springboard for success. Defeat is not part of their vocabulary. Change, act, make a decision, and go after it. Failure to act is a decision, almost always with negative outcomes. The 4C, continuous improvement. The search for excellence must have no end. Anything less is simply inadequate in the long run. And finally, you should all guess what the 5th C is. Christ Church School. And in there, just summarizing, the faculty, which for some of the old guys we refer to as the masters, leadership from the school level, the student body, and then the last, the alumni, which are in fact the shoulders upon which you and future generations must stand. I suggest to you that as you listen to the presentations today, see if you can identify the C's in action. The 3 being honored today are a product of Christ Church School and many years of individual effort. Their contributions have earned the pride we feel for these inductees into the Hall of Fame. Our first inductee today for Christ Church School's Hall of Fame Lifetime Achievement Award is made to Roger Mormon, class of 1939. I hope the student sailors here today use this opportunity to speak with Roger's family and learn more about this remarkable innovator and his impact on you and the sailing community. And for all of you all that do sail here, and the school has an incredible sailing program, think back that Roger Mormon is right there at the base of what you are sailing today. Harvey Morgan, a lifelong friend of Roger's, will give us insights into Roger's psyche that led to his success in designing and building the 17-foot bobjack, which one is out front. Harvey is a native of Gloucester, a pharmacist, and a delegate in the Virginia General Assembly for 32 years. 32, man, that's quite a record. He will give us some insights to the inner man. Harvey will introduce Roger's son, Jeffrey, who will give you the family observations on this CCS graduate. Please welcome the Honorable Harvey Morgan.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. What a wonderful occasion and a particularly important honor for me to be able to speak about my friend Roger. I knew Roger Mormon virtually all my life. He was 8 years older than I, but he was a close friend and a mentor for me. A rugged individualist, to say the least. He was not concerned about fashion. He was a strong man. He was probably not as tall as I am, but he was very solid. But not concerned about fashion. The whole time I knew him, if he ever had an occasion to wear to dress up for some activity, he would wear his Naval Academy sport coat, what became a sport coat, Naval Academy jacket, and that was adequate for him. He didn't seem to need to have clothes the way that he wasn't pushed to follow the current movements. I remember Roger smoking a pipe, and I think it was always one of the curved ones. But he enjoyed classical music. My wife and I used to go down to his house on the mill pond and spend evenings. We'd lie on the living room floor in front of the fireplace and listen to classical music. And that's something, a memory I cherished. He also would take me out in the yard and show me things. On the way out, there would be a side of a deer hanging on the back porch, and in the wintertime, of course. And if he wanted a taste, he would just slice off a piece of the deer and eat it as it was. And he used to freeze fish by he would freeze them, he would dip them into water and freeze them, and then dip them into water again. He continued to build up layer after layer after layer of water, and that kept them from drying out. This was long before we had the plastics that we have now. And that was innovative as far as I knew. But what a brilliant mind. Roger read Scientific American the way most people would read Reader's Digest. And a wonderful craftsman. He designed and built sailboats, as Bobby has said. Notably the Mobjack, which is a 17-foot racing sailboat. And I hope you will look at the one that's on display outside. That boat is still popular. He invited me to come to his shop. He had bought 2 Old Town canoes, molded plywood canoes, that had been rejects from the factory. And they'd get messed up a little bit in the molding process, so we just sanded them down and put the 2 halves together, and we finished them naturally on the inside. It was beautiful wood, mahogany wood, and the outside, because it had the imperfections, we painted them Chevrolet truck green. But they were wonderful boats, and I cherished the time together that we had when we were building those boats. But one thing I want to share with you, when Roger was ready to slow down and take some time sailing, he adapted the hull of a Raven sailboat, which is a 24-foot sailboat, very popular still today. And I think he lengthened it and widened it. But then the Raven is just an open boat. He put a cabin on the front of the boat, on the bow of the boat, and he named it the Raven Mad. And then he decided he wanted an aft cabin. So he put an aft cabin, after cabin, which had one forward and one aft. And this he called the Stark Raven Mad. And that's the boat that he sailed down to Florida and spent many winters in Florida on the Stark Raven Mad. And because the centerboard had a swinging centerboard in the Raven, he always was concerned, but if the centerboard line broke, it might tear the bottom of the boat out when it fell. So he decided that he would have the centerboard go straight up and down, and he improvised using a tractor steering wheel to raise and lower the centerboard, and the centerboard would come up right under the boom when it was up, but when it was down, it gave good effective operation. I have a story about Roger that. This is actually a story about me. It's a little embarrassing, but I have to tell you. He invited me to sail with him from Florida back to Virginia, and I didn't have enough time away from work to go very long. So I flew into Augusta, Georgia, and sailed with him from there to Charleston, South Carolina. And the very first afternoon when we left, in a little while a squall came up, and so we made sort of for sheltered waters. And then he said, "Now Harvey, when I tell you, throw over the anchor." So I threw over the anchor, but I was very enthusiastic, and I slipped and I fell and I went over with the anchor. And of course I didn't want it to get away, so I held on to it. Actually, I let it slide through my hands so that I would have still be tied to the boat, and I pulled myself back on. And as I was climbing back on, he said, "That'll teach you to go barefoot on a sailboat." I told that story a number of times, and told particularly to my legislative assistant, who was a retired Army colonel, who, after he left the General Assembly, he and his wife went sailing for 3 years on a 38-foot Morgan, I think. And they met Roger Mormon in Florida. Sailing is a small community. And they were, when they told him they were from Gloucester, Virginia, he said, "Oh, you're from Gloucester. Let me tell you about somebody, and there's something that happened." And he told that same story to them, and I had already, fortunately, I had already told them that story, so they already knew it. But we had many good times together, and I just, the last time I saw Roger, he was in Gloucester House, which is a convalescent facility. He was about 82. No, he was about 88, I'm sorry. And he looked, his skin was as smooth. He looked like a teenager as far as his skin was concerned. He just was a magnificent specimen of an individual. And I'll always remember that. I want to, at this time, introduce you to his son, Jeffrey Mormon, who will tell you more about the family. Jeffrey apparently spent most of his early life, I'm not ready to let go yet, as a film and video cameraman. And he started WTVR in Richmond, and he worked his way up to network TV in Washington Bureau of ABC. And he covered the Ted Bundy, the Chi Omega serial killer in 1979. And then he remembers sailing at age 5. The very first time his dad handed him the tiller in the Mobjack at Fishing Bay, he told him to pick a house at the other side of the river and just sail to that and steer to that. And that's what he did. Then he crewed for windmills, the windmill class champion in the early 70s. His dad built those too. And he says between always winning with the windmills and with Dad, most always being in the top 3 at least with the windmills, got pretty spoiled. So he did race later on 17 and 19-foot catamarans in the 80s as a skipper. He said, but apparently winning is not genetic. But then he got his U.S. Coast Guard captain's license in 1989 after escaping, he says, from TV, and sailed in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and he skippered, and then he went into freelance chartering, and he's doing that somewhat now, and also he ferries, he's a delivery skipper, and he does some photo work, but he's in the final stages now of a complete refit of a 1970-foot, 46-foot Bowman yawl that he bought sight unseen at St. Augustine, Florida. And he said the project is called On Everything He Ever Learned or Thought He Knew About Boats. So I want you to welcome Jeffrey Mormon.
Jeff, it's an honor to induct your dad, Roger Mormon, into the Christ Church Schools Hall of Fame for Lifetime Achievement. I'm going to read this real quickly to you all. Roger Mormon devoted his life to sailing and producing the first fiberglass hull boats in the 1950s. His desire to make a superior performing boat led him to design and build the Mobjack, a 17-foot boat with an all-plastic hull and self-bailing system that was the first of its kind. As a testament to the endurance and success of the Mobjack design, this class of boats is still actively raced at many yacht clubs in the Chesapeake region and beyond. After designing the Mobjack, Roger procured and held patents for it in both England and Canada. He also operated his company, Mobjack Manufacturing, from the 1950s until he sold it in 1965. As a seahorse, Roger's passion was sailing. Between his time in the classroom and on the river, He also found time to serve as a student photographer and compete in athletics, playing both football and baseball. After graduating from Christ Church, he lettered in gymnastics at the U.S. Naval Academy and then joined the U.S. Merchant Marine. Roger died at the age of 90 in 2012. We proudly induct Roger into our Hall of Fame. And one other little tidbit, Jeff, I don't know if this is true, but I've heard that Roger was the one that designed the Seahorse logo for Christ Church.
I've heard that. I can't confirm it overnight. But we'll go with that. Yes. If my iPad dies, then you're on your own. I'd like to thank Christ Church School, Mr. Byers, Harvey, and all the sailors, past, present, and future, here and beyond. A Saturday morning with Mob Jack sitting on a trailer next to the Rappahannock River at Christ Church School, the old man probably would have said something like, "Done died and gone to heaven." Christ Church was always very dear to Dad. We came every year to the alumni picnic. He usually sailed up from North River on his boat, and it was always in his thoughts. Dad was always building, modifying, or designing something. He was never still. And I think the story goes that he put a sail on a little skiff that he built when he was around age 10 on the North River, and started sailing and never quit. He sailed here at Christ Church School, and it doesn't take any stretch of imagination to see that the genesis for the Mob Jack began in a great part here at Christ Church. Dad went from here to the Naval Academy. There he built on his innate understanding of what makes a good sailboat great. He sailed every chance he had on the Severn River. And when his stint as a gunnery sergeant, or gunnery lieutenant rather, on Liberty ships going to Russia ended with the end of World War II, he came back to Gloucester, joined the Legstool shop there, and learned to make fine furniture. He was also in great demand as a gunsmith. He had his hands in a lot of things. But somewhere Dad saw the design for a British lifeboat, which was self-bailing and shore-launched. And that was what sparked the Mob Jack. So 3 years of experimentation and good old trial and error later, the first Mob Jack, which was made of plaster of Paris and chicken wire. And it took him months and months, probably a year. I don't even know because we never really talked about it, but he got it built, faired, and finished, ready to be the basis for a mold for the boat. And the thing broke in half before they could pull the first mold. They didn't give up, they just started on another one. So in 1956, finally, the first Mob Jack rolled out of the shop on Court Circle, and it's named Orange Crate. It was orange. It was number XX for experimental. And as far as I know, it's a testament to his ingenuity and his innovation, design. That boat was still sailing in the 80s. Syncor was one of the things that Dad got a patent for. It was an innovation. It was ahead of its time. And it was one of the many things that he came up with to make this boat work. Because back in those days, fiberglass reinforced plastics was a brand new process. There were no Wikipedia, there was no YouTube videos, there was nobody to tell you how to do it. So he just set about making it happen. And it did. And the Mob Jack is quite simply the first production self-bailing fiberglass boat in the world. And I know nothing that would make my father more proud than the honor that you're bestowing upon him today. For him, his work, and to him. Thank you.
Our second Hall of Fame Lifetime Achievement is presented toward our skull to some of us known as Buck. Class of 1961. I think Jeb already mentioned that class, didn't he? As a classmate to Buck, I can certify that Buck never lacks for words, thoughts, and deeds, and is the classic Energizer Bunny. Buck has selected Glenn Oder to introduce him and share some personal experiences and observations. Glenn graduated from Virginia Tech with a degree in landscape architecture and served in the Virginia General Assembly for 10 years. A mere kindergartner compared to Harvey. Presently, Glenn is the executive director of the Fort Monroe Authority and the Fort Monroe Foundation. Apparently, these two characters, Ward and Glenn, joined forces in a somewhat unholy alliance to perpetuate havoc on the legislative system in Richmond until the voices of those who could not speak for themselves could be heard. Please welcome the Honorable G. Glenn Oder.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, and it was a special honor to be asked by Ward to be able to make this brief presentation. I have a couple of thoughts, and then I have a presentation to give to Ward that I'm going to speak about in just a minute. But what I want to tell you a little bit about, and I think that my good friend and legislator from Gloucester would agree with me, is when I first got to Richmond, one of the first things that a senior senator came and told me is he says, you know, young delegate, you need to understand this. He says, Richmond is about relationships. And so I took that to heart. What I learned later on, though, is that relationships in Richmond can often be like a puddle on the interstate. They can be a mile wide and an inch deep. They don't last very long once the situation changes. The trick is, and the challenge, and what makes it special, is when relationships grow into friendships. And what I want to say to the students here that are listening is be mindful of that. Have an antenna and recognize when relationships grow into friendships, because as you're seeing here on the stage today, relationships that turn into friendships last a lifetime. I'll also tell the students here that in order to be effective and to be successful and to have your goals and to see your goals achieved, you have to be recognized. Now, I'm going to tell you this, and this is not passing judgment on anyone, so please don't take it that way. But I want to tell you that it's not being recognized by the number of tattoos that you have, or the piercings that you have, or the color of your hair. It's not by the possessions that you have, the size of your house, the number of boats that you have, or the value of your car. It's actually much harder than that. You want to be recognized for hard work. You want to be recognized for dedication. That's what you want to be recognized for. This comes from things like integrity, passion, knowledge, dedication. Imagine being recognized and being remembered for your loyalty. Imagine being known for your love. Those are the things which you want to be recognized for. Ward Scull exemplifies, in fact, he excels in the things which I described to you, in turning relationships into friendships. You know, he demonstrated the love for his employee, and that grew into the love for people who were suffering at the hands of payday lenders. He turned his passion into a way to help people. He dedicated himself to learning the issue, not an easy thing to do. He used his knowledge to then influence other people as to what he had learned. And when people asked him why he cared so much, there was really nothing to say, because his integrity was the lighthouse that we knew he was all sailing towards. You know, Richmond Times cartoonist recognized all this. He actually created a character that exemplified payday lenders called Sharky. Sharky started appearing in these political cartoons all over Richmond. They were hysterical. I still have one of my favorite ones was two sharks swimming through open waters. One shark says to the other shark, he says, "What are we looking for today?" And the big shark looks back at him and says, "Loopholes." Ward captured this momentum like a surfer on a wave. He rode this thing like you would not believe. To try and be recognized, to try and get people's attention, all of a sudden little plastic sharks started showing up all over Richmond. They would show up in legislators' mailboxes. They'd showed up on desks at reception areas. They showed up in the restrooms. I'll never forget one of the restrooms, and the countertop is covered with little sharks all over them. He created notepads. Everybody needs a notepad in Richmond. Ward recognized that. Ward created these notepads, but 36% is enough. Ward's his flag, his lighthouse he was sailing to was 36% interest is more than enough for anybody to make money off of a loan. He created ball caps. These ball caps all had 36% on them, multicolored ball caps, and he passed them out freely all over Richmond. He even found this stuffed shark. He started carrying this stuffed shark around with him wherever he went, all over Richmond, and named it Sharky. As we started to have some success against the payday lenders and started to make their lives more miserable, they quit the practice of payday lending, and they went to title lending. Ward finds out title lending. That's when somebody takes the title from your car and charges you this high interest rate for it and holds on to your title, and eventually one day if you don't pay it back, they come and they take your car. Ward found out that all of the states around Virginia had all outlawed car title lending. We were the only state that had not outlawed car title lending. So Ward goes and takes this shark, and working together, we added license plates to this shark. We drug it around Richmond. I will tell you, it looked a little bit like the sketch of Marley and Scrooge, dragging this license plate laden shark all down through Richmond. You couldn't go people now heard you coming down the hallway as we did this. And what this did was it gave a voice to the people who did not have a voice in Richmond. We're talking people who could not afford to leave work and go to Richmond. They couldn't leave work and go find their legislator even when we were home in our districts. But the payday lenders, wow, Ward and I would walk into a room and the entire room was filled, standing room only, with all these people that the payday lenders had paid to be there and wore big giant buttons that said, "Don't take away our payday loans." How in the world were we going to overcome? It was David and Goliath on steroids and opium as far as I was concerned. Ward was undaunted all day long and all evening long. One time Ward purchased, or rented I suppose, because I haven't seen it since, an 8-foot shark costume and stood outside the church of a lobbyist and greeted people as they came out of the church on the streets of Richmond on Sunday morning. You never knew what was going to happen next with Ward as he worked tirelessly to become a voice for the people who didn't have a voice. And he even used his money for people who could not afford to do the things that needed to be done to bring attention to this issue. So I leave you with these words that if you want to achieve your goals, don't be afraid to express yourself. Don't be afraid to reach out and create friendships like Ward has. Don't be afraid to see those friendships last a lifetime, because that's what's going to make you successful in life. You don't have to be the legislator, but boy, it's sure helpful if you're friends with the legislator. You don't have to be the banker, but if you can be the friend with the banker. All those things are going to be the stepping stones that you're going to use as you go through life. So I would like to ask Mr. Scull to join me up here. And Ward, as you come forward, I just simply want to say, because I know there's going to be a thunderous round of applause on behalf of all the people who could not speak and the voice you gave them. Congratulations. And so I just have to tell you, this has been a long time coming, an opportunity to recognize Ward like this and to present him with something that you haven't had in a while, Ward. So Ward, are you ready? Okay, here we go.
back to Portman Road. He's nourished you. He's cared for you. And look at you. You are ready to go. You're ready for some more action up there because you still got some unfinished business in Richmond. So anyway, when you're just going to drive me nuts, but good God Almighty.
Warren and I, well, I was going to say this last thing. We had, one day, Ward and I sat in my office. I needed his brains. I really did. I was just a legislator. That's easy to do. We had to figure this issue out. We covered my entire office, all 4 walls, with what happens if we did this? What happens if we did this? And so we ended up with all these pieces of paper, and I saved one of them, Warden. Sharky's been just living with this. So he couldn't wait to come back and see you.
Oh my God.
Congratulations.
This is unbelievable. Man, you are exhausting, and look at this. We've even got wonderful things in Glenn Odor, House of Delegates. Ladies and gentlemen, I think he's ready to go back to Richmond. But right now, he's got a number of things to deal with in Portman Road. That's sewage treatment. I'll shut up.
While they're trying to dress him properly, I'm going to read this plaque. And this is for the induction year 2018 Christchurch School recognizes Ward Buck Skull, class of 61. Ward Buck Skull dedicated a significant part of his life to overcoming the injustices of payday lending. With no prior experience in government or the legislative process, Ward quickly overcame this steep learning curve and became an effective advocate. Ward partnered with the archaeology professor from the College of William and Mary, and together they purchased Big Island at the mouth of the York River to preserve the history of the people of the Guinea Marshes. In 2008, Ward was named the Daily Press Citizen of the Year in recognition for his commitment to a worthy cause to improve the lives of others. The Virginia General Assembly also honored Ward with a resolution for his hard work and community involvement. We proudly induct Ward into our Hall of Fame. And I'd like to say that we're only looking at the tip of the iceberg here. There's actually a whole lot more, but Huntley said we only had 5 minutes.
Bobby, I thank you and the Christchurch School and the members of the committee who have honored me with the introduction into the Hall of Fame. I'm so grateful for this acknowledgement, but what I have done so far is not about me. It's something greater than me. It's about those who have walked alongside me in this journey that allowed me to help those who could not help themselves and those who had no voice. That something greater than me is a higher power, and it is the family and friends who nurture me and the community that I found at Christ Church that surrounds me to this day. As Jack Kohler said, rich is not how much you have or where you are going or even what you are. Rich is who you have beside you. And as you saw and heard me speak here, I was blessed to be able to have Glenn Odor and the Bobby Combs with me, as well as many of my family and friends that are here today. It is about my father and mother that found strength in God and lived through the First World War, World War II, and the Great Depression. They knew hard times and grew up with rationing, but they nurtured and provided for my brother and I in Hilton Village, eloquently described by Christ Church alumnus William Stein and fellow Hilton Village resident as being a shipbuilding city along the edges of the marshlands and where the marshlands end. My parents reached out to Billy Stein's family when his mother died, as people do in Hilton Village, in Newport News, and that's what you do in Newport News when there's a loss of life. This is the type of community that I grew up in. Both my mother and father were deeply committed to education. Many older kids were being sent to Woodbury Forest or Harvard Military Academy, and if you really screwed up, you went to Fork Union. My father sat on the Newport News School Board, and when they decided to send me to Christ Church, he was publicly criticized for sending me here while being on the board. But his response was that Connie and I have decided to send young Buck to Christ Church as our number one responsibility is his education. My dad was fond of saying that an education, son, is something that nobody can take from you. And I have thought that in addition to the love I received from my parents, that the gift of education that they gave me and the sacrifices that they made to provide it is the greatest of all gifts. Through sacrifice, they gave me the opportunity to learn how to study at Christ Church. I learned how to think, not what to think. I learned to explore and to try different things and to learn by doing. I learned not to dive into shallow water, although I broke my neck in the process. I learned how to bring joy to Monument Avenue at the crack of dawn at 3 a.m. in the morning by ringing the First Baptist Church bells. And I learned how to sneak back onto campus. So I wasn't always the choir boy that I grew up as. I would never have gone to Duke had I not gone to Christ Church, nor to Wharton to get my MBA. Christ Church prepared me not just academically, but most importantly by helping me form a set of values at an important time in my growth. Establishing solid values when you're young gives you important guideposts throughout your life. My values were shared here, and as I look back, so many of the key decisions were guided by Christ Church lessons. Raising Dr. Dathrop, or as G.K. Chesterton said, a life not examined is a life not worth living. So when you are called, how will you respond as students? Will you procrastinate like I did at the beginning, or will you seize the opportunity to be the Samaritan and help the other man along the road? The story of how I got involved in payday lending has been told, but what few know is that while at Wharton, I was asked to work on President Johnson's program of war on poverty. And through my work with the Goodwill Industries, I became to understand further the importance of social responsibilities that corporations must and need to have in society. I went on to IBM after earning my MBA, but soon I applied and received a commission in the United States Army Medical Service Corps, working in the Surgeon General's office. It was while I was at the Officers Club at Walter Reed Army Medical Center that I met Cookie, whose last name would turned out not to be Jar, even though that's the name she gave me and the time we met. Her name was Suzanne, and she was a teacher and an artist whose smile and humor and warmth made you feel better about yourself. We married in November 70, traveled to Europe for a month, separated from the Army, and in January 1971, I returned to Newport News and the family moving and storage business. I planned to stay there for 1 year and either sell the business or allow a manager to operate it for me. 47 years later, here I am, still trying to figure out what I want to do. It was one of my employees at the company that first brought the issue of predatory lending to my attention, and as Glenn had pointed out. And when she came into my office in tears to ask for an advance on her pay, and told the story of a payday loan that grew larger and larger and eventually spiraled out of her control, she opened my eyes to a tragedy resulting from the erosion of shared vision and values of faceless entities that are too often concerned with their bottom line rather than the community's health and well-being. The pain caused by the institutions of predatory lending was too much for me to ignore. I often think of William Wilberforce's words that his pursuits were not out of my bondage, but out of my calling. Standing up for the voiceless and the powerless, I found was my calling. And to many of those here today from Christ Church and from elsewhere, stood by my side on this mission and supported me emotionally, spiritually, and financially with great generosity. We didn't ultimately win the battle against payday lending, and we created a huge coalition of nonprofits, businesses, trade associations, chambers of commerce, and many religious institutions. I know there's been countless hours working our legislators in their home districts and in Richmond, but we were up against a massive industry with millions of dollars to spare on lobbying. What we did, though, was to bring attention to an issue that the industry had spent a lot of money trying to make invisible. We helped individuals that had been victimized by predatory lending and gave support to institutions that are continuing to fight. Most of all, I and those who supported me stayed true to our values and to our calling. If I can leave you with one thought, it is that individuals can make a difference, even against giant machines of institutionalized evil. Those of us fortunate enough to attend Christ Church and the institutions like it have a special duty to stand up to those that haven't been given the same opportunities to do our best to make a difference and to follow our calling. Thank you all for celebrating with me today, for traveling here to take a part of this induction. Thank you, Christ Church School, and to the Hall of Fame Committee, and congratulations to my fellow inductees. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Pretty impressive story. Our third inductee is Fielding Crawford, class of 1999. We're almost getting to this century. For the Christ Church School Hall of Fame Athletic Award. Fielding has asked David Tobble to provide his introduction. Dave has been a teacher, coach, and administrator with 3 of the church schools, including Christ Church. Dave has been involved in athletic programs throughout the Commonwealth. Presently, Dave serves as the Director of Business Development for the Enrollment Management Association, which serves as a think tank for improving schools' enrollment processes. Please welcome David Tobble.
Hi, everyone. In present company, very humbling to be up here introducing Fielding Crawford. Fielding Crawford. I mean, by name alone, this guy should be in a Hall of Fame, correct? In fact, in true story, Fielding existed on the all-name team of the now defunct Lax Power Forum for several years running when they looked at popular lacrosse names in the men's game. I was first introduced to Fielding in the mid-90s when I had the great fortune of being here at Christ Church School as the admission director and lacrosse coach. Fielding was kind of a gangly, all elbows and knees guy who moved pretty swiftly up and down the lacrosse field playing for a club team that we had the misfortune of inviting to the Dan Nolan tournament. We thought we had a first-round win in hand because we had a Williamsburg area club team invited to play, and we knew that they were comprised of players from around the area and unlikely to be able to stand up to the Fighting Seahorses, who had the privilege of being able to be on Dishinger Field 5 days a week and sometimes Saturdays. And lo and behold, Fielding Crawford had the ability to leverage his own talents and lift those around him to be quite a formidable foe. We learned a real lesson in that game. The lesson that I learned personally as the admission director at Christ Church School, like any decent admission director would do, I recruited him. And so we had the great fortune, and his parents are here today, are so grateful to them for investing their son in us here at Christ Church. Fielding, as you can read in the program, had quite an incredible career with the Fighting Seahorses during his time in the 98 and 99 seasons. One of my colleagues, Chris Schmidt, now a PhD, a professor at Penn State, writes and wanted to share about Fielding as a player, that he was outstanding, both as a person and player. Certainly one of the most conscientious, intelligent, determined, and hardworking players he'd ever coached. Importantly, while he was continuously looking for ways to improve his individual skill set, he always prioritized what was best for the team. Of course, captains are supposed to do this, but it can be really challenging to find high school players who are able to see the benefits of selflessness, team development, and modeling a positive attitude every day. Fielding was the quintessential captain. He was someone he could turn to for feedback, advice, and to gauge the pulse of the team throughout the season. Chris felt lucky, as did I, that he had a chance to attempt to positively influence his development, and even more grateful that he was able to learn so much from Fielding, as we all did. He's thrilled that the Christ Church community is recognizing his excellence by inducting him into the Hall of Fame. Certainly well-deserved, and a great reminder to all of us what excellence looks and feels like. After his career at Christ Church, Fielding took his talents as a real sharpshooter to a Division I program at the University of Delaware. He really contributed to their program until he felt the calling of the shoreline again and became a pirate. No, he literally became a pirate. He transferred to East Carolina University and graduated with a degree in history, took his talents to the Richmond area, and continues to develop young men of character, coaching for Appley High School and some of the area's travel lacrosse programs. I feel perhaps my opportunity to introduce Fielding to you is a punishment in some way, in that I had the misfortune of being the crew chief and official on his recent state semifinal game, where they came up short-sided due undoubtedly to some of the missed calls by the officiating crew. But I saw firsthand in Fielding the things that I admired about him as a student here, whether he was invested at the waterfront program or on Dishinger Field, rising to make the players around him better. He coaches with the same energy and commitment that he had as a competitor on the field from the sidelines. Perhaps more importantly, Fielding is a loving husband to his wife Becky, a very dedicated and loving father to his sons Rivers and Tucker, who are here. Hi guys. Are you looking forward to hearing Daddy speak? I am too. And he continues to lead by that example which he exuded as a player here at Christ Church. It gives me great honor to introduce to you for his Hall of Fame induction, Fielding Crawford.
The award to Fielding, I'm going to read the plaque to you. Fielding Crawford, 99. Fielding Crawford has dedicated his life to the game of lacrosse. As a junior attackman at Christ Church, he broke both the single-season assist record, 66, and the point record, 120. As a senior, he was captain of the team and lead scorer, earning All-Prep, All-State, and All-American status. Fielding went on to play lacrosse at the University of Delaware. He then transferred to East Carolina University, where he earned a degree in history education. Fielding is involved with community youth lacrosse programs throughout Virginia and North Carolina. He spent 2 years as the offensive coordinator for the University of Richmond lacrosse team and now coaches the Atlee High School lacrosse team, where he has led his team to championship appearances for the last 3 years. We proudly induct Fielding into our Hall of Fame for athletic achievement. One little lesser known fact that didn't make the plaque is, I think he was on the sailing team.
Well, first I want to thank Mr. Tybalt for those kind words. When I was contacted about the induction, you were the first person that I wanted to be involved, and I'm so glad that you're here to celebrate. I'd like to also thank the Hall of Fame committee for bestowing upon me this great honor. I feel lucky to be inducted into a fraternity of individuals who really are the who's who of CCS and beyond. I'd also like to thank the fellow inductees and their families. It's an honor to be inducted with Mr. Mormon, class of 1939, and Mr. Skull, class of 1961. We, along with our families, will always share this unique connection. I'm excited to have some great family support here, especially my wife Becky and sons Rivers and Tucker. I'm sure you've heard Tucker a few times. When Mr. Cohn called me last spring about the induction, I was floored. I honestly didn't know how to react, but I'd spent some time. It was a great opportunity for me to reflect on my time here and beyond. And what I want to use this time to do is talk about a few individuals who had a great influence on me and helped shape who I am. My very first coach is here, Mr. Wayne Warren. Wayne traveled from Georgia to be here today. I'm so glad that you came. Wayne was the reason I started playing lacrosse. He had started a youth team in Williamsburg, and we lived in the same neighborhood, and he said, "Hey, do you want to come play on my lacrosse team?" I literally had no idea what lacrosse was. But I said, okay, well, let me go ask my parents. So I went home and I asked my mom, can I play lacrosse? She said, absolutely, anything but football. Sorry, Coach Arnold. So that was sort of the genesis of me starting to play. My mom didn't realize that lacrosse was pretty rough in its own right. But nevertheless, I was playing lacrosse for the first time. Wayne had such a positive impact on me and was so patient with our whole team. We were a group of ragtag players who had never touched a stick in our lives. But he was so patient with us and really allowed us as new players to fall in love with the game of lacrosse. I can never forget some of those Saturday mornings down at Virginia Westland and Norfolk Academy. We got beat pretty bad by some of those teams, but nevertheless, we kept coming and we kept getting better, and we kept trying, and we appreciate that. Wayne has spent his entire professional career in law enforcement and is now a United States Marshal, and he currently instructs new marshals. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you first. Thank you. So youth ball started to grow in Williamsburg a little bit, and that is when I met Dan Mullen, who's also here. So let's. Dan had played lacrosse at Springfield College, and he was an integral part of the growth of lacrosse in Williamsburg. I really loved Dan as a coach. He was always so calm and had things under control, and he still does. He's just so even. Over the years, I have been fortunate enough to play for Dan, coach alongside Dan, and work alongside Dan. And I'm grateful for his guidance and support. So thank you for being here today, Dan and Wendy. Mr. Tybel talked about Chris Schmidt, who's not here today, but he was senior year. He took over as the head coach here at Christ Church. He was also my dorm parent, so I was able to interact with him. And the thing I admired most about Coach Schmidt was his attention to detail and his commitment to discipline on and off the field. I think probably the fact that he played for Coach Giblin at Georgetown Prep might have rubbed off on him and then onto us too. So I'm so glad to have had Chris Schmidt as one of my guiding forces and coaches. Coach Tybel. What a huge role Dave has played in my life. I can say with certainty that I would not have become a Seahorse without your effort to make Christ Church a reality for me. Having Dave as a coach was something I've always cherished. Since becoming a coach myself, I've learned a few things. But one of the best things that a coach can do, or the best coaches seem to have the ability to make their players or allow their players to buy into anything that's thrown at them. Whether it be a new concept, a new team rule, or just asking them to play outside of their comfort zone. When I think back to playing for Coach Tybel, I can remember how much we all wanted to do right by him, how we wanted to be the best, and how that inspiration began with his guidance. Thank you, Coach Tybel. My parents were both public school teachers, so coming to a private boarding school was quite a financial commitment for them. While it wasn't easy, they knew that this was a place that was filled with positive opportunities. Yes, Doctor. They have always been so supportive of me and held me to high standards. I'm constantly trying to navigate being a parent myself, and seeing how my parents were with my brother and I has helped me keep the ship steady. My time at Christ Church really was a special experience. I tried to hit the ground running and tackle school with dedication and drive. The friendships that ensued simply can't be bundled into a speech or even measured. All in all, it was a defining moment in my life because I had found a place that I was supposed to be. This campus, this school, these teachers, they're all ingredients in a recipe that sends young adults out into the world to thrive and be successful. I'll always be so grateful to have attended CCS. When I think about where I am now and how I got here, things seem to always connect back to 49 Seahorse Lane. So in the spirit of the current Christ Church social media campaign, #CCS right now, there is a proud and humble student, athlete, teacher, coach, husband, and father standing before you. Thank you, and go Church.
Thank you all. Again, congratulations to Roger, Ward, and Fielding for being who you are and for what you have accomplished. Individually, your achievements serve as an inspiration for all CCS students, faculty, alumni, and friends. You are assets to the Christ Church School and provide an important cornerstone supporting the school. This concludes the award ceremonies. The new Hall of Fame members and families will be available, so please visit them and learn more about these high achievers. And for the sailors, let's go look at the mob jack. Thank you all for coming.